Thank you very much for the invitation. Looking forward to come here and celebrate you today. And thank you also for asking us some very difficult questions that we want to discuss. This will definitely not be a very funny presentation from me, but probably it will be very realistic because we've been asked to reflect upon the question of the BA and master programs. Is this how we create the real and best scholar and teacher of religion now and in the years ahead? And I guess we as department chairs, me as a soon retiring department chair, should discuss some of these issues, also related to, as Tim asked me further on also in an email, about the study programs, ideals and challenges. So again, this will probably not be very funny, and I'm so sorry to hear that this will also be recorded, but otherwise I hope at least it will be interesting enough to do some reflections and discussions afterwards. And I think I'll have to present the first Danish word, studieordninger, which I guess sometimes in English is translated to academic regulations or study programs, if you were whatever. Studieordninger is the best Danish word for it. And in a way, that's the identity, that's the DNA of what we often think of in terms of what we think ideally our students should know. So we're defining the ideals or realities of what should probably create the best scholars and teachers of religion. And that's why it's also sometimes, if not always, very sensitive issues whenever the studieordning are changed. Because every now and then, every few years, changes have to be made for different reasons. Because ideals of scholarly education should also be somewhat in alignment with, or at least responding to different demands, not only defined by individual scholars. So in general, you could say that studieordning, study programs, always a result of different interests and contexts. The ideal version, I believe, does not exist. As is, by the way, also the case with what we are studying, there is no essence, only agreed upon results of negotiation. That sounds almost Buddhist, but I guess also in general about our subject of religion. And why is that so? Well, mainly, I think from the beginning, it's also because there are different interests. We have a diversity of interests. First of all, we have scholars, we, the enlightened scholars and teachers. One example who could be this person, who are obliged, you could say, to contribute to preserving the tradition of good scholarship within our field by teaching it also to our students. And we also obliged, on the other hand, as scholars, to critically innovate the field and teaching our students so-called research-based teaching. That's at least the ideals. As such, each teacher does not own a specific topic or field. He's a representative of the scholarly tradition as it's generally interpreted in the department where he is working. And I think that's very important. You do not own your own topic. You're a representative of the institution where you have your job. But of course, the tradition also defines what you are teaching. So I would think in Denmark, in generally, it's typically religious studies of religion would be very difficult to think, at least in university level. We might hear different stories when it comes to schools and stuff. Although there might be general consensus of the broader perspectives and ideals, there's also strong diversity of the ideals of academic regulations, diversity in both research and teaching, I think personally is the strength. And in Aarhus, we have cherished the ideas of including and sometimes even blending different fields and approaches, history of religion, sociology of religion, psychology of religion. But I think also diversity is potentially also what could lead to disagreement, since not all things, everything is equally important. It might actually be a very human trait that the very stuff you are focusing on yourself is also deemed to be what you think is the very most important to other people also. So what is important to teach the students depends very much on each individual's own ideals. We also have other interests, not least society in general. Society pays for our universities and expects some kind of return for the investments. The humanities, I think, have always been a field less measurable, but it seems that the argument of providing critical studies and the values of general Dannelse, Bildung, historically have been at least mildly accepted as a minority field. Whatever causes we might find for the new global, and I think it is global bashing of the humanities, that could be, for instance, the general acceptance of new public management, Bildung has become less of a convincing argument for the critical studies of religion. Humanities need to be relevant, according to such ideals, and education should be instrumentalized so that we can provide students with competences directly transferable to a career immediately after graduation. So just like individual scholars are increasingly measured almost exclusively by the ability to get external funding, so should the studies be aligned with societal demands for instrumental relevance. And actually our finances and intake of students are increasingly dependent on post-study employment rates. Any responsible leader, I'm afraid to say, or even head of department, will have to take that, at least would have to take that seriously into account. Education systems. Educating students to be good teachers in Danish high schools or gymnasium has been a major raison d'etre for the study of religion, I think, throughout the history in Denmark at least. Religion is still a very important subject, and traditionally the university departments and gymnasiums have had very positive and constructive relationships. The so-called academic minimum requirements, faglige mindstekrav, of the Ministry of Education is a text certifying the alignment between universities and gymnasium, canonizing what the students are supposed to learn. And thus we also offer a diversity of religions, theories, and methods. However, only a fourth of our students actually get a career in the educational system. Can we continue basing our education on a situation long before employability became a buzzword also in the Danish education system? Can we continue sacralizing Bildung as the main argument where there are only few career possibilities for our students? Should we align them also with the gymnasium's so-called general competences, kompetenceområdet from 2017, asking for more focus on digital and global competences, innovation, and career learning? Also, each university have different strategies, setting up some ideas to be addressed. At Aarhus University, for instance, it's societal challenges, business cooperation, and job market competences. Such ideals might take a bit more rhetorical rehearsal when applied to a course in Egyptian religion or Japanese Zen Buddhism. Students, we could dream sweet dreams of students being profoundly eager to learn all of the exquisite research being conducted at the departments. Some actually are, and most students are actually quite satisfied with our studies. And we know that because we've made some evaluations asking them about this. But we also see a generation of students having adapted to the increasing focus on career and instrumental learning. Students want service, recognition, relevance, and a job. If the study is also profoundly interesting and academically relevant, it's just a plus. Students are an asset with a voice having authority, and an ideal of student-based teaching with feedback as the new mantra has become part of our teaching systems. If we drop too many of them, we don't work, and if we don't work hard enough to give them competences for their career, we are economically doomed. So in making a perfect or at least somewhat agreeable studieordning requires a negotiation of different interests situated in concrete contexts. And here is the example from Aarhus. And usually when I see this studieordning, I use the Danish version. So I'm not used to looking at the English, and I'm a bit embarrassed to see some of the translations here. I've never checked them before, and phenomenology with an F and empirical sociology, blah, blah, blah. I will have that fixed when I get back. So these are the studieordning study regulations, bachelor's from 2018 and master's from 2017. Some of the characteristics are, we have a diversity of topics, theories, methodologies, and empirical fields. For instance, the first, let me see my mouse, yes. This first block here, 20 ECTS, starts with Phenomenology of Religion with PH, not an F, and I know that we'll have a specific session later on that with Jørn and Jeppe, I think. So I won't say more about this than, of course, underlining that, yes, this is very important to have Phenomenology of Religion. So you don't even have your session now. Well, I've given the answer. And we also have different courses on distinct religions taught according to, and I know that we might be the only place actually doing that, according to Robert Beller's typology of different religions. Tribal, archaic, and axial religions, exemplified with typically Central Asian religion, Norse religion, Israelite religion, Judaism, Hinduism, and Buddhism. And we have some languages, propedeutic languages, to support at least some of the religions, namely Latin, Greek, Hebrew, Arabic, and Nordic, Norse. So some religions are supported by language, others are not. And those that are supported by language also will have a, that must be organizable, right? Primary source language paper. They will be tested in analytical skills using their language in this topic here. And we have general sciences of humanities, we have Studium Generale, we have philosophy of religion and ethics, we have sociology and psychology, both here, the first year, and fifth semester, sociology and psychology of religion, plus methods related to these. So we have a diversity, but we also hope that we have some kind of progression. Languages, again, we have language here, and they'll be tested in analytically using it here. Although, of course, it's been a discussion for years. We know that our students do not use their language, not even in the studies, not in the final thesis, and very few also in gymnasium when they get a job there. So at least one of the reasons of keeping languages is also a kind of a rite de passage in order to the ideal framework also of building something you need to know, not necessarily instrumentally because you have to use it specifically for something. Another thing, progression, is the classical religions, typically up here, going through to modern religion with a particular focus on Christianity. We have, of course, progression from the BA to candidates, where master's level, where typically you would have more independent studies, more practical or applied research, for instance, a project here where you'd be part of a concrete research project. Some of the courses are obligatory. You would, for instance, need what's called internationalization elective. Studium Generale is compulsory, and also third semester in the master's is totally dedicated to career, project placement, or profile courses, as it's called, or international electives. This is typically a semester that many teachers do not like, but most students like, because it's instrumentally useful for thinking career. So, is this how we create the real and best scholar and teacher of religion? No. There's simply too much in the structures that gives much too little flexibility. We have, for instance, language, 2 times 15 ECTS language. We have tilvalg electives. We have obligatory courses. We don't have much freedom in, for instance, using our content or the skills that we actually do have because of the structure, and also because of the economy. There's a certain amount of hours that we are allowed to teach. We are only allowed 1 elective course per semester. When I was a student, I think most or a lot of it, the sun was always shining and we had a lot of electives in the good old days. We also allowed only to have 1 5 ECTS course. I think we are going to negotiate that. I've been promised that it's negotiable. And also master's level, our 3rd semester is totally blocked. We cannot do anything about it. Another thing, and that's maybe more personal observations, that no, I think we have some underprivileged fields. I think that our study program, and I'm pretty sure that at least in Copenhagen, not so much maybe in Odense, it's very much centered on Western cultures, Western traditions. You might even call it Eurocentric. We have 15% ECTS on Christianity. We have languages supporting specific religions. We have philosophy of religion, which is only Western philosophy. We have sociology and psychology, mainly related to Western contexts. On the other hand, we have 5 ECTS to all of Asia, meaning all from Vedic religion to modern Buddhism, nothing at all about whole of East Asia. Personally, I think that's embarrassing that our students will come out after several years without ever having heard of Confucius or Shinto and stuff like that. It's not possible to have master's seminars because they simply have too little basis and they have no languages to support it. They have not heard anything about Orientalism or post-colonialism, or basically very little about global perspectives. And I think that also goes here for very little focus on indigenous religions and maybe even also Islam. On the other hand, well, yes, most teachers to some extent agree to most of it. It somewhat fulfills most of the ideals of most teachers according to the structural limits that we have. It's good basis for the 1% aspiring for a research career. It's good for the 25% aspiring to get a job in gymnasium. That is, if they're not specifically interested in Asian religions. And it's kind of a very good, it is a very good studieordning for most, but not if you're specifically instrumentally interested in using your studies to get a concrete career afterwards, which is not related to research or education. So how about the 75 or 74% students looking for a different career? Career enhancing initiatives, of course, need not be part of the curriculum. Should, I think, also personally be part of some extracurricular activities. And after all, very few of my colleagues, and I think that's general for most of us here, have very little experience outside of the educational system. So I think my time's up also by now. To conclude, the academic study of our university and in Denmark in general, I would think is a very high quality. We just need to tell all the others about it. And of course, we are forced continuously to rethink the scope of teaching religion at the university, which also, of course, is because we have some very high-profile teachers and scholars. Thank you very much.
But first a little bit, yeah, maybe with some different notes, and maybe mine will even be shorter because you elaborated on some things and I don't have to elaborate on them. But firstly, I'm Annika Hvithamar. I'm head of department at Cross-Cultural and Regional Studies. And I've been head of department for the last couple of years, but also been head of studies for 5 years. And that means that I'm really speaking from a management perspective for one thing, sorry. And it also means that I've been out of religious studies as a teacher, except for on and off for the last 7 years. It also means that I represent a department where religious studies is just we also teach and do research in such different areas as Egyptology and Chinese studies and minority studies and Russian, etc. And I also have some of my fine colleagues sitting here from the Middle Eastern section who will hear later on today. And this is just to say that when I look at religious studies, I see humanities, and I see how universities are developing today. And this is also the reason for my focus in this presentation. But just to do the same thing as Jørn did, and the other way around, here comes our curriculum plan. It may be important to say that compared to some of the other countries that you represent, we make them completely ourselves. Jørn mentioned that this is a negotiation area, maybe even a battlefield, but that means that when studieordninger are created, it's the professionals, it's the scholars who sit and negotiate, in lack of better term. It's not that we have a state which, as is the case with high schools, draw up the plan. That is important, I think, because when I look at the curriculum plan for studies of religion, religionsvidenskab, in Copenhagen for the BA at least, I see a plan which is approximately the same as when I started to study back in 1990. So it's a conservative plan, and it also reflects the actual persons who have been engaged at the University of Copenhagen. I still have colleagues who taught me when I was a student, but it also shows how conservative these curriculum plans actually are, and that is for good and for bad. Then there are some characteristics about the University of Copenhagen. We have a stupid, in my opinion, rule that all modules must be 15 ECTS. And that is really rigid because also, as Jørn was talking about, it means that, for instance, electives or innovation of some sort, it's difficult. If you have to try something new, it often means that you just have to have 3 or 4 teaching lessons with some kind of topic instead of having it tried in an exam, and to have it incorporated year by year if some teacher, for instance, shifts. Another specific of the University of Copenhagen curriculum is that, as I just mentioned, we are the diverse department, and what characterizes cross-cultural and regional departments is that we are language-based area studies, and that means that our students, they can actually take a full variety of languages. I've actually listed it approximately in the range of popularity. Most take Arabic, we have around 30 students each year who take Arabic propedeutics. Then they take the classic languages, Greek and Latin, and then they take some of the others. And as Jørn, I can repeat that this is sort of a rite de passage, because come on, half a year or half-time studies for 2 semesters of a difficult language, say Arabic or Russian or even Chinese, you won't learn a lot. But you may, and this is a discussion we always have, you may have a feeling of how difficult translation is and how important it is to know other languages. Then, well, I had said it already that we have approximately the same structure. It was merged, the Department for History of Religion, the Department for Sociology of Religion, and the Department for Christianity back in 1988. I see Jørn Poelman sitting here, and he was there, so this is why I'm looking at you. I think it was 88. Yeah. And this structure is still there, and you can see some of the things which are typical for that sectionalizing. We have world religions. The history of religions, 15 ECTS covers all kinds of religions, except, of course, for Christianity, which has its separate course, which then deals with Christianity as a column from the letter of Paul until post-evangelical Pentecostalism in Southern America. And then the only sort of innovation is that in themes in the study of religions since 2015, where there was a revision of the curriculum plan, half of that course is a focus on Islam. So that's the great innovation. Concerning the MA, it was renewed in 2017, where there was a merger of the then 2 MAs, one in sociology of religion and another one in history of religion. And the reason for the merge was, again, what I'm going to talk a little bit more about than Jørn, but the demand from the government. We are a public university in Denmark, and our managers as such are the parliament and the Ministry of Research. And in 2014, they made I don't know how to translate that, a dimensioneringsreform, where they solely based the intake on the MA on the level of employment postgraduate. And that meant that then all the programs in Denmark, which had over average unemployment, they got cut down compared to how much over unemployment they had. And in that schedule, the religious studies in Copenhagen and in Denmark, for that matter, were cut down to 14 students as maximum intake. And that meant as such that if we were supposed to have 2 candidates, they were also divided. We could have 4 on one and 10 of the other. So it's just to say the merger was for economic reasons and for societal reasons, as Jørn also mentioned. We try, and we do try still, to keep up a specialization in the MA, and this is what you can see on the screen, where we have 1 year where it's theories and methods. Then we have a general topic where it's religion and public space and history and today. And then they specialize if they want to. Then they go out and take electives, or they go abroad, or they serve as interns. And then they make a master's thesis. And that means that they will have 3 types of candidates. They will either become general MAs of religion, or they will be sociologists of religions, or they will be have a specialization in religious studies in the history of religions. And when I'm stumbling a little bit, it is because it's very long titles, and as you can see, that specialization is by and large 15 ECTS on 1 semester, and then what topic they choose for their master's thesis. So, well, yeah. I'm only going to have one particular notion about, is this the best way of creating a scholar of religion? Well, I think that the curriculum plan in the department in Copenhagen, it more shows this battle among the the scholars, and it shows the rigid structure with the 15 ECTS. And it also shows, and this is what I mean with this one, that MA is a specialization of a BA. It's sort of more of the same. It's not something where the students meet completely new topics or completely new theories or completely new methods. They go in depth with what they already know. And this, I think, is actually quite typical, at least for my department, that our MAs, they specialize something which the students have already learned. And I think actually it's one of the challenges, because what we've seen over the last couple of years is not just a pressure from above and below, that we have a limit from the government on how many students we can take in. It's also a pressure from below and up, so to say, whereas the students, they do not choose our MAs, they choose something else. And when we ask them about it, they do so because they think it's more of the same. And now, by the way, they do need to get a job when they're finished with their MA, so they need to do something sensible or something which can get them a job. And I think actually that this is one of the challenges that we do have also in the study of religion, but also speaking as a departmental head, because it's not just the politicians who want us to focus on what happens afterwards, it's also the students. And this is not to say that we are a profession, that we need to only educate for a profession and only for what has economic value. But I think it would be false not to realize that the students actually do disappear after they graduate. Maybe not to a specific profession, but certainly to some kind of a profession. And this is what I'm going to use the latter half on. Because, as Jørn has already said, where do the candidates find employment? This is from, we have this mechanism called Uddannelse Zoom. Students and candidates, they can go in and look for information about any particular line of study in Denmark from all the universities. And they take the knowledge from this, they take from Danish statistics. So it is the most updated knowledge we have on where our candidates go post-employment or post-study. And when the numbers differs, and yours was a little bit lower, it's because teaching is more broadly understood, not just high school teachers, but also teachers in other kinds of, even primary school teachers, but teaching by and large. When it says defense and police, it's not so much, it's just one category, but a lot of our candidates actually go to public administration and ministries, both on municipality and governmental level. Health and social service, for some odd reasons, quite many of our candidates go to the hospitals, where they advise, for instance, in palliative care, in the more taking care of different kind of needs, say, for instance, with religious minorities. And then in what is translated as other areas of businesses, what we can see is that postgraduate employment in the private sector is rapidly growing. It was only 10 years ago where our candidates almost always found their work in the public sector and also as teachers, but it's not the case anymore. So, and now I'm repeating Jørn again, gradually fewer candidates become high school teachers. Constantly few candidates become PhD students. And this is perhaps where I see one of the challenges of our study program, is that we are all PhDs, and we tend to constantly train our students as if they were supposed to become PhDs as well. I mean, as if they're training to be researchers, and they are not. And I think it's a way, it's a shame, and I mean it when I use the word shame. If we actually look at what Jørn said was 75%, maybe even more, as sort of a waste product on that 1% who should become PhDs. And then, well, they find increasingly more candidates find employment in the private sector. So what we look upon is an increasingly differentiated work market. And again, I'm not saying that we should educate with a sole profession in mind, or that we should teach them how an organization functions, or that we should become a business school. Not at all. But I think it would, I mean, they do go somewhere. And I'm curious to find out how they use their humanistic skills and competences in whatever job they find. How do they make the world better? We know a little bit about what they think about it. You see, this is just another version of showing how it changes. Every third year, we make a survey of graduates where we ask the last 3 years of candidates what they felt about their education. And I mean, methodologically, it's not very sound, only a fragment answers, etc., etc. Again, this is the best figures that we have. And when you look at it, how much do you agree or disagree with the following statement? There's a consistency between what I've learned during my education and the competences demanded by my employer. You see that, I mean, it's not impressive. It's not exactly discouraging, but it's less than 50% which thinks that we teach them what an employer wants from them. It's pretty many who thinks that they are on their own. And when we ask them, my education has equipped me for my current last job, is a little bit more. Just to say again, it's not discouraging as such. It's just, it makes me curious about how can we equip them better in ways which does not mean that we should teach them about organization theory or something like that. So where do I think we could go? To some of the questions. How do we see and create the best scholar of religion in the years ahead? And now I do it. I advocate Humboldt. Because I actually do not think he would turn in his grave when it comes to the development of modern higher education. Because even though the Humboldtian University was and is characterized with the quest for knowledge and the invention of the university where it's not solely focused on professions, Humboldt's quest was also to enlighten the world and educate students to a new era. And we are in a new era by now. Also because in his world, and he not lived, but he died 200 years ago. At a time where industrialization and the nation state was in its tiny formative years and where access to universities were limited to the sons of the higher bourgeoisie. Then we're looking into the 21st century where many professions are changing and getting disrupted. So teaching for a specific profession becomes more and more redundant. And with these words, I evocate another person, Rousseau, who even longer back in history wrote The Social Contract. And the reason why I advocate him is that I think that not so much I, but in the scholarly debate about the future of the university, Rousseau's idea about the social contract is advocated. And this whole question about where do the universities go, what is the future of universities, what is the use of universities, is very much about the social contract. And this notion about that at the Humboldtian times, at the Rousseauic time, and today, we do serve the society, not the other way around. So our legitimators are the society, yes, but also the citizens. So if they don't see us as legitimate and useful in the broadest sense, how do we make the world better? Then we have a problem, and I think we should address this problem. And then finally, just not to just show dead old men. This is Helga Nowotny, who is part of a group who many years ago learned us the phrase Mode 1 Science, which was about a time where knowledge was solely mastered by the universities, where we had a monopoly on creating knowledge. We do not have that anymore, and this is was made known, among others, by the word by Helga Nowotny. We have a world where first mode 2 science evoked, where the industries, where the government, that is mode 3, where many people and sections of the world is now being part of the knowledge creation. And I think that it's time that we invite those sections more into the creation of what we do at the universities. Now we're talking even of mode 4 science, that is the government societies, the businesses, and the academic societies. So practically speaking, and I think my time is up, I think that what we can do at the universities, and again, it's not about not teaching them world religions or not world religions or theories or methods in the study of religions, but it is something about, while they're with us, to encourage students to think about how they will make the world better post-graduation. Again, not in increasing the amount of money that they earn, but how can the study of religion, with the knowledge that we do have about humankind, about people, about religions, go out there and make the world better in the municipalities or in the private sector or whatever. So in other words, to be more curious about how the candidates choose their degree and how it contributes to the study of religion. Talk to them, know who they are, invite them back. We do that a little bit, but we don't do it at a systematic level yet. And then finally, and then back to this curriculum, and this is going to be my last words. Try to invite other professions, perhaps, into the development of the curriculum. It may sort of mellow the battleground. So it's not just the professionals and the scholars who create those curriculums, but perhaps also some of the representatives from the other modes of science. Thank you.
Thank you. So I represent the university in the middle, or if you look at the IHR world map, the university and the city in the center, maybe with Aarhus closer to the real center. But this is how the IHR map is still looking in our logo. So I'm happy to be with you, and I hope that the discussions that we have here can lead to more discussions in the future with the new sort of leadership in Aarhus. Jannik Fortrup is sitting here listening carefully to everything that is being said. And my successor, of course, will also listen to what we are saying. And I guess that your colleagues too. I will start from another perspective and stress the very, very, very old, more than 100 years of intimate link between the history of religions at the university level and religion education in upper secondary school. I think that has been very important. And I don't think that it necessarily needs to stop now that we all know that lots of our candidates are neither interested in nor actually gets a job in the upper secondary school. I think there are other good reasons for having this link stay, namely the dissemination of the scientific, academic study of religions, research-based results to the population at large. I still think that's something we have to figure out how to stick to. We have to keep our close relationship to the Ministry of Education, upper secondary school. And thank you. Therefore, I will actually start with another, and I haven't made any slides. It's because I have been so busy over the past 2 days conducting this conference on sustainability and the social relevance of the humanities, challenges and opportunities, and Armin has been there. And we have been discussing the usefulness and the uselessness of the humanities and trying to strike the balance between the two, I guess. But quite often, of course, also very well aware that the humanities should not also play such a defensive role, but also actually take the lead. Armin pleaded for teamwork, not just interdisciplinarity, but teamwork. And I think that's also something that we have to maybe, and that may link up to what Annika said, can sort of try to integrate in some of our study programs. We already do it in a little way, and now that I have this up here, we have here Gitte, who is the head of the Aftager panel, and all the universities have such, and in Aarhus and at least in Odense, we have one specifically for the study of religions, and you have a broader one, right, in Copenhagen. And that's exactly meant for the sort of market out there to feed us with their ideas in order for our study programs to become more relevant, socially relevant, but also in terms of employability. So I think we have moved a lot over the past years, also in Odense, in terms of looking to the future of the students. We are very well aware, and I tell them when I come, and I have been head of the study departments for 20 years, forget about it. If you think that you'll just get a job in the gymnasium, and you probably don't want it, but if you think you can always get it, forget it. Those times are gone. There are no jobs, very few. But then again, I also tell them, and this is also something we discussed the other days, who knows? Who knows? And this is something I think we really have to strike the balance between focusing on the job market and then forgetting about it. No, maybe you cannot make use. When I started studying comparative religion, history of religions in, I can't remember when it was, 70 something, all my friends said, are you necrophile, right? What are you doing? Religions are dead and gone and nobody's interesting. And what about a job? Are you going to be a minister? No, I said, that's another thing, right? So what are you going to do? When I ended after 10 years, highly specialized in ancient Greek religion, there was no job, except in the gymnasium. Then I went there and everybody said, there's going to be a permanent position. 5 years later, I got a permanent position. You never know. 10 years later again, Jensen, who had been establishing the study of religions here in Odense in 1980, 81, 82, left because Armin bought him, right? It's all about money. It took him back to Aarhus. And that gave me the chance of getting in here. So I left the upper secondary school where I had been, as Jens said, sort of a leading figure for at least a few years and head of the association. And I would probably have become Her Majesty's inspector if I had not been such a controversial person, right? And I did not. So I came here instead, and then I started to do things here. So things changed because then we had this democratization of the whole university, and we have lots of students who thought simply that religion was interesting, not because they were religious, more about what was happening in the world. So it was the social relevance of religion in the world that was interesting. And we profited on that. We grew and grew both in Odense and in Aarhus and in Copenhagen, and soon we could simply beat theology, right? We were much more popular. And now we are back to this problem. Oh, what do we do with all these students? And I always remember also what Peter Anders has told me. If we had looked at in the short term for the use of the study of religion for our students, then Peter Anders would not be sitting here, so to speak. I mean, nobody knew that Shia Islam would ever be interesting in terms of social or political relevance when you started to study it. It was a totally breadless study. Forget about it, Mr. Anders, right? And then we will close the door. We cannot do that. It is ridiculous. So it's not only ridiculous because we are sort of the elite or academically snobbish. It's because we are deceiving our students and the whole world if we think that we know what they can do in even 5 years from now. We cannot. And also, I think, and I'm saying that time and again, when we discuss all this about employment, and we have an employment center here, I have meetings with these boys aged 23 who think that they should teach me about how to get our students an employment. Pullman, who's sitting here, Rothstein, who's not, we, and Jeppe saw that years ago, we made a consultancy. Of course, we knew that religion mattered and that we could sell our knowledge to businessmen, to diplomats, to police officers, to prison personnel, to hospitals. We have done all that. We have been there. So we know that. But we have to stick to the something that we do not know about. Namely, what is the use of this? What may be the use of this? We don't know. And I think this is very important. Anyway, let me get back to this link to the sort of gymnasium, the upper secondary school. This is in Danish, I know. I apologize, I haven't had the time. I have some articles because I have used it in some articles where I've translated it into English. But I think that the main thing is, and I have written that several times, that most of the scholars in religion, also those who get together to draft the study programs, more or less agree that this is important for the making of a scholar of religion. That they should have a basic science of religion, history of religions, comparative, sociologically based knowledge about the phenomenon of religion, religious sort of expressions, and relations between religion and the rest of what we call culture and society, past and present. We all agree about that, I think. And also they should have sort of a solid knowledge and be able to apply relevant theories and methods, as well on historical material and contemporary material, source material, I want to stress. They should have, therefore, something about the research history, including relevant philosophy and philosophy of science, and they should also know something about criticism of religion and ethics. They must be able to analyze relevant source material, be it text or images, with regard to the understanding of religion in a cross-cultural and historical perspective. And this is something also that sometimes I think differentiate the study of religions in Denmark from study of religion elsewhere. We are just like they are in upper secondary school, maybe to a lesser degree now than when I started there. We are so happy about source material. We want to train the students to analyze in a critically, scientifically sound way original texts in translation and sometimes also in the original. And the last one is, it has been touched upon by Jørn also, sort of a holy cow. But it's a holy cow for good and bad reasons. It's a holy cow because it has actually provided us with some more time for the education of the students. I remember that was a main argument from Aarhus when I think Annika maybe once sort of dared to utter the possibility that we should get rid of it in order to make space for something else. Aarhus people like this, and ministry said, if you cannot agree, we'll not even discuss it. And it stays there. And I know that some people think we should do something else, but I become more and more fond of it. Even if it may be a waste of time, I don't care. I think this is exactly what we sometimes have to insist on, that something is the guy with Islam, right? He said, oh, you are saying that this is so good in Denmark, and it's so important, and the pupils and students really learn something about religion so that they become more enlightened. Could you please point to me where in the Danish public debate about Islam can I spot that? And I said, oh, I'm sorry. I'll never forget his objection because it's important. This is, yeah. So then they should have, of course, and it is explicitly said, knowledge about Christianity, its formative, historical, and contemporary formations in a global perspective, so we are not that Eurocentric, as well as in its European and Danish ways of formations based on key texts and other kinds of source material. And they must also have knowledge of Islam, etc., and then some other religions, Inter alia, Buddhism and Hinduism, also based on key texts and other kinds of source material. So again, the text, the source materials, this is what we work with also. So I insist that, yes, it is true that we are a bit conservative. And this is also why I asked Armin to reflect on this about Sia and Prytz Johansen, because I still believe that we have to strike the balance, and I think we do it most places. I have some plan, what it's called, but we do it between what I call the traditional sort of profile of a scholar of religion, namely that he or she is a specialist by way of being an excellent generalist and a specialist by way of having a specific historical philological knowledge of a specific area or time or what we call religion. So this something is important, and on the other hand, comparison. So we have to have what we call phenomenology of religion, and we have to have a broad introduction to all the religions of the world. And I'm totally sort of irrespective of criticism of the world religions paradigm. We all know that there are no world religions. We all teach about Hinduism never the same. But of course, we include the criticism of essentialism or reification in the teaching from day one. But we continue to do it. And I am still very sorry that we cannot ask our students to simply read the 3 volumes of Illustreret Religionshistorie or the update of it that Michael Rothstein Pohlmann and I have edited some years ago. We should simply ask them to read all the religions. And I think they should be able to get up at 1 o'clock in the night and you ask them to tell me a little bit about Shintoism or about whatever it could be, and then they can do it. That's a scholar of religion. So let me move on and try if I can find the next thing, because then I will just not spend so much time on that, because it's the same as we have seen elsewhere. Can you see some of this? It's no, okay. I want this one. Can you get that? Okay. So, as I said, we don't obviously have somebody translate it for us. So we are not that international. But I mean, you can see what we have. It's the old-fashioned way, but I think it's solid. I think it's good. And I'm very curious to see what my colleagues come up with when I leave now. We have what the Americans call the cornerstone course at the bottom. So I go the other way than some of you. And that's the introduction to comparative study of religion with the phenomenology of religion. And note to this, we have no problems calling it the phenomenology of religion. We know what we are talking about. We teach our students what we are talking about. So who cares that it's still phenomenology? We talk sometimes about comparative religion, but so they will have in this course, they will have an introduction to normally Hellenistic religions. At the time of Hellenistic religions, we find that very useful. That's sort of the beginning also of Christianities. Then we have an introduction to indigenous people's religions, or whatever it's called today, primitive religion. Then we have an introduction to sometimes something else, but normally this indigenous religions, Hellenistic religions, and phenomenology of religion. But we could also have a course on Greek religion or Mesopotamian religion if we so decide. And that is the cornerstone. Then another cornerstone course is a course on what is called religion in the Hebrew Bible with Judaism. It's not a lot of Judaism, but it's sort of there. And that is, of course, something where the students can see that this called Hebrew Bible has a lot of religion and various kinds of religion, and that is not just one thing, and there is a lot of sort of discursive fighting going on. So they learn a lot about what we call phenomenology of religion also there, and the evolution of religion, etc. We have what we call forms of Christianity in ancient times, in medieval times, and in Reformation time. And that goes over 2 semesters, so it's 5 and 5. By the way, so far we have had the permission to do 5 and 10 and 15 ECTS. I think that will be stopped, but I have, in view of my retirement, I have no longer listened to what they say. I don't care. They can do what they want. Then at the second semester, we have Islam, also following the step up in terms of more teaching about Islam that we had from the upper secondary school, and Indian and East Asian religions. And then again, another interesting thing is, of course, that some of this is closely linked to manpower. I don't know if in the future we can have this, because maybe Michael Achter doesn't want to teach it. And if he doesn't want to teach it, who else amongst the 4 or 5 people left when I leave are going to take care of that? Well, of course, we all claim that we are generalists and we can all teach any religion on the first 2 semesters, but we cannot do it equally good. And we are not equally interested in doing it. But we still have it there and it's also in general, so it's a good thing, I think. And what we have done as everybody else, and it started also when I took over in the 2000 whatever, we have of course made sure that we move from the past to the present. So you cannot give a course on Islam without telling the students that there is a mosque across the street. But what we try to do is to not end up with teaching about Islam and then only teaching about the headscarf controversy. And this is a risk when we move into contemporary stuff. We have had so many BA home assignments about headscarves that I'm sick and tired of it. No, and this is another balance we have. We have to get back to basics. We cannot get engulfed in contemporary issues that has to do with all these things. Then we have religious innovation, past and present. And we have, once again, more phenomenology of religion. Now we go more into the problematics, theories, etc., and focus on maybe one phenomenon, ritual, or whatever it could be. Modern forms of Christianity, including alternative kinds of Christianities, leading us up to date, taking us out in the world, an elective. And then we have a focus subject, meaning that each and every year, the teachers can come to me and tell me, I would like to focus on this because I'm doing research on that. So we have that possibility. Then we have the, where is that? Oh, the sort of main aspects, main phases in the research history of the science of religion. Of course, we have moved it from the second semester to the third because we realized that the students didn't understand a word and they hated it. Now it's a little better, but this is a problem. They really don't like it. And it's so difficult to teach about it, despite the 2 volumes Armin and I have edited. And actually our colleagues do not use it. Then on the 4th semester, we have theory and method. And it's a little bit more sort of philosophy of science in general, but it's focused on the study of religion, some kind of philosophy and ethics, but as you can see, we call it related to religion or the study of religion. And then once again, a sort of free subject where the teachers can come and offer their sort of interest for this semester. And then this original language subject, and then something that Odense has been said to be sort of the first mover in terms of doing the didactics of the study of religion from a study of religion's perspective. But I know that elsewhere you have something similar to it. So that's sort of the basics. And the MA, yes, there are some blocks where it's free, where the teachers can once again offer each and every semester their special interests. And of course, the students to a certain degree can start to specialize, but not much. And we have more theory and method, more sort of research traditions within the science of religion. So we sort of put much more focus on theory and method. That's the normal thing. On the other hand, we have some subject areas based on empirical material. So that's it. Now, the final thing is that we also have something that you call project, what did you call it, oriented towards the labor market and so forth. And we have then managed to tell the faculty and everybody else that we want to have some of it specifically aimed at religion. So it's a 20 ECTS course, but the 10 of the ECTS we handle by way of 3 courses where a scholar of religion lectures about intercultural communication. That's that part of the job market, Voldsmose, integration, etc. And then we have another one teaching something more about teaching about religion in schools, education. And then a third one focusing on religion, popular culture, religion museums, religion and the media, journalism, etc. So we take back the 10 of them, and then they go out and get some kind of practice. So that's what I would like to say. And I think that when Jeppe started here, it was evident that you have 3 persons with each their specialization: a theologian, Christianity, a philosopher, philosophy, and then Jeppe as a scholar of religion, and then sort of 3 strings. But now I think we have integrated it, and we have actually educated the philosophers who teach philosophy about the study of religions. And that's how it is in Odense. Thank you.